All right, let's dive into something that sounds like it's been ripped straight out of a sci-fi novel, but it might just be the future of our cities. It's a project called Lumanflora, and it's built on a pretty wild idea. What if our city infrastructure was alive? So, let's get into how we might just turn our cities into living, breathing ecosystems of light. It all boils down to this one simple but kind of mind-blowing question. Seriously, forget streetlights, forget neon signs for a second. Just imagine walking through a park at night, and the light isn't coming from a lamppost. It's coming from the trees themselves. That's the huge idea we're unpacking today. Okay, so here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll look at the current problem, our cities in the dark. Then, we'll get into the Lumanflora vision itself. After that, we dive into the science, how biology actually meets technology. Next up, the really futuristic part, the programmable forest. And finally, we'll zoom out and talk about what it means to build our future with living infrastructure. All right, first up, let's talk about the problem Lumanflora is really trying to solve. You know, our cities are incredibly bright, but all of that light, it comes at a really, really high cost. This slide, I think, lays it out perfectly. On the one hand, you've got our current reality. Our artificial lighting just devours energy, it creates all this light pollution that washes out the stars, and honestly, it can make our cities feel kind of cold and static. But on the other hand, you have this vision for living light. It's solar-powered, has a natural glow, and it feels dynamic, alive. It's a totally different way to think about how light shapes our spaces and how it makes us feel. And if you want to put a number on it, here it is. 1.9 billion tons. That is how much CO2 our urban lighting around the world pumps into the atmosphere. Every single year. That's not a small number. That is a staggering environmental price to pay just to keep the lights on. And it's not just about the energy. This whole approach, it drains city budgets, and it's tough on the planet. It makes our public spaces feel impersonal. Our advertising is crazy power-hungry and, let's be honest, kind of outdated. And in this world, nature is too often just treated like a decoration, not a real functional part of the city. Okay, so we've seen the problem. Now let's get to the really exciting part. The solution. This is the Lumanflora vision, and it imagines a completely new way for our cities to literally breathe, glow, and maybe even communicate. This is the phrase from the source material you really got to remember. It sums up everything. We're not talking about a new kind of light bulb here. We're talking about a whole new category of material to build our cities with, living infrastructure. So here's the core promise. Basically, you have genetically engineered plants that glow. They soak up the sun all day, and then at night, they naturally release that energy as a soft light. No plugs, no wires, nothing. It's a living, breathing lighting system that, and this is the really wild part, turns nature itself into a programmable platform. Right, so you're probably thinking, how on earth is any of this even possible? Well, it's not magic. It's this incredible fusion of biology and technology. The main idea is actually pretty simple. You let nature do all the heavy lifting, and you just use technology to gently guide it. The science here is all centered around something called bioluminescence, which is just a fancy word for when living things, like fireflies or some deep-sea fungi, create their own light. So the Lumanflora project wants to borrow the genetic recipe for that natural glow from fungi and carefully weave it into the DNA of trees. Okay, so the process itself, when you break it down, is kind of like a four-step recipe for creating living light. Step 1, scientists pick out the right genes from organisms that already glow. Step 2, they use that famous gene editing tool, CRISPR-Cas9, to pop that DNA into a plant. Third, they add a tiny little IoT chip. Think of it like a small brain that connects the plant to a network. And finally, you grow it. And what you get is a living, intelligent, solar-powered light. And look, this isn't just some far-off fantasy. This timeline shows that the science has been building towards this for years. Back in 2017, we got the first proof of concept. By 2020, scientists had plants glowing on their own using DNA from fungi. Just last year, new research boosted that brightness 100 times over. So proposing to add network control today, it's really just the logical next step on a very real scientific journey. Okay, so this is where the science starts to translate into something, well, truly revolutionary. Once you have one of these controllable, living lights, what happens when you connect them all up? Well, you get a programmable forest. The project even lays out a whole potential product line, kind of like you'd see with a new phone. You'd have your basic Lumanflora for a simple single-color glow in your garden. Then you'd have Lumanflora Pro with different color options for public parks, and then the whole shebang, Lumanflora Pro Max with full color and animations for huge dynamic displays. You can totally see how it's designed to scale up from just one backyard to an entire city. And the applications, wow, they're incredible to think about. This is so much more than just street lighting. Imagine pathways in a park that light up as you walk by, or famous landmarks that subtly change color with the seasons. Or what about festival grounds that pulse with the energy of the music, all powered by living plants? It would completely change how we design and experience our city. Now let's talk about maybe the biggest potential use case here: advertising. The proposal makes it super clear. This technology is not about creating more screens or more billboards. No, it's about creating advertising that people can actually feel. Instead of some glaring digital billboard, imagine a whole grove of trees in a public square, gently pulsing with a brand's colors. It becomes an emotional, living canvas. The kind of thing that creates a real memory, not just another interruption you try to ignore. All right, let's zoom all the way out now and look at the biggest picture. If this research actually pans out, Lumanflora isn't just some cool piece of biotech. It's a potentially massive economic and societal shift. We'd be entering the era of living infrastructure. And here's why this is such a monster idea from a business perspective. Lumanflora doesn't just fit neatly into one little market. Even though it's still a research idea, its potential sits right at the intersection of three massive growing industries: smart city tech, outdoor advertising, and sustainable energy. When those worlds collide, that's what creates this multi-billion-dollar opportunity. But of course, with any tech this world changing, you have to ask the tough questions, right? It's not all going to be a walk in the park. What are the potential downsides and the real risks here? The research proposal is actually really honest about the challenges. First, genetic instability. Will the glow still be there 5 generations down the line, or will it fade out? Then there's regulatory rejection. Getting a genetically modified tree approved in cities all over the world is a huge hurdle. And what about public perception? Is society even ready for this level of engineered nature? And maybe most importantly, can the tree itself handle the extra energy it needs to glow without hurting its own health? These are the major questions they need to answer. And that brings us right back down to earth. This isn't a product you'll see on shelves tomorrow. The Lumanflora project is a formal research proposal. It's asking for $18.5 million over 5 years to answer those exact questions and to try and turn this incredible vision into a technology that actually works. So in the end, it leaves us with this massive question. Is this a real glimpse into a beautiful, sustainable, living future for our cities? Or is it a step too far, blurring a line in our relationship with the natural world that maybe we shouldn't cross? That's the conversation Lumanflora starts, and it's definitely one we're all going to be part of.